in India, we are yet to have it announced for the third shot. There are many who are getting it unofficially, especially the frontline workers, just so that they are safe,
Yeah.
but not officially announced as yet for the third shot. And early this month, they have said that it's going to begin with the senior citizens and gradually to the others.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Rajesh, are we going to start? Over to you then.
Rajesh, shall I start?
Good evening, everybody. I would request Professor Richard Rose sir to start the webinar series 3. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Rajesh, and welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time to come to this third meeting of the India Inclusion Research Network presentations. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking myself. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Pooja Haridarshan. Pooja, who resides in Bangalore, is a researcher who's made a very big commitment to the rights of women and girls to receive a more equitable education system. He's worked very hard in recent years with a specific community, the Divanga community in Bangalore, and I'm sure she will talk to you about that community and give you some very interesting insights, both in terms of the methods that she's used and the findings from what I think is a very important piece of research. Her work has recently been published, and I'm sure anybody who's interested in following up with Pooja, she'd be delighted to talk to you and give even more details about the work she's been doing. So I will be quiet now and hand over to Pooja and look forward to hearing what she has to tell us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. And yes, good evening, everyone, and a very happy new year to all of you. So today I'm going to be talking about how I did the data analysis in my research. And my research is titled as The Influence of the Childhood Experiences of Women in Bangalore on Their Aspirations for Their Children. This was strictly a community-based study, and I looked at both socio-cultural as well as academic perspectives. Next slide, Rajesh. Thank you. So during this session, we'll quickly look at the nature of the study as well as the research design, because if I don't talk about the research design, I will not be able to explain the analysis bit of it. And we'll also look at how I analyzed and interpreted the obtained data. So to give you a brief introduction to the study, why I did it and what was the reason for taking it up. So I got married into this community, which is called as the Devanga community. Okay, it is a small weaving community in India. So they are scattered in various states in India, but primarily their occupation is silk and cotton weaving. Okay, that's the introduction about the community. Now, when I got married, I witnessed several instances of patriarchy, female suppression, male superiority, girls getting married very young. And this kept, tickling my mind as to why is this happening, especially in a city like Bangalore? Because one would want to believe that in an urban setup, in a highly literate, highly modern city like Bangalore, you wouldn't expect to see such things. So I believe that these were things of the past, but I was also witnessing them happening at very close quarters. Why were girls not being encouraged to take up higher education? Now, we all know that the education of women is a very widely contested and debated topic. It's a very important topic, but it is still an area of contention. And this situation is no different within the Devanga community. So that was my first reason for taking up the research. Now, the second reason was there has been no previous research conducted on this community. Okay, that was one thing. Secondly, in India, there has been no previous study conducted on women's childhood experiences. So when I went about conducting this research, I had absolutely no literature available from India. I had to rely on literature from other Asian countries like China and Pakistan. I'm only talking about the childhood experiences part of the women. So my intention here was to trace these women's journey like a roadmap, from their childhood till when they have children, just to understand how have their childhood experiences had an impact on how they raise their children, on whether they have different expectations for their sons and daughters, or is it the same, and what are they doing about it. So that was my second reason for having taken up this study. I also wanted to contribute to creating knowledge or creating data about this community, since there is absolutely nothing available. And it was very difficult for me because when I had to give the history of the community, I did not know where to go and research. I had to speak to very senior members of the community. I had to travel uh, about 400 500 kilometers to meet some very elderly people who could give me some information. Okay, so that is how the aim of the study also came into a question here. Rajesh, next slide please. So the aim was to understand the lives and the roles played by the women of this community and to provide them with an opportunity to voice their experiences and stories. Now, with the aim clearly decided, came the research questions. So the first research question was, how have the childhood experiences of a sample of women in Bangalore impacted upon their aspirations for their children? Now, when I say childhood experiences, I was going to focus on everything related to these women's life. Uh, Things like what kind of a school did she go to? What kind of a school did her siblings go to? How was her relationship with her siblings? What kind of educational opportunities was she given? And what kind of opportunities were her siblings given? In terms of financial allocation of resources at home, was there any distinction made between the participant, that is the woman, and her male siblings? Okay, was she encouraged to take up extracurricular activities? These were all the things that took over the childhood experiences part of it and came under the first research question. This was what I was seeking to understand. My second research question looked at how these women in this sample have differing expectations with respect to the educational outcomes for their sons and daughters. Do these women have the same expectations for sons and daughters, or are they different? And if they are different, why? And what are the provisions they are making for it? And finally, the third research question looked at, in totality, how have all these experiences of these women's lives contributed to their own role and status in the Indian society? Where do they see themselves within their families, within the community, and within the society in a larger picture? And this was the most sensitive part of this research, which I will talk to you in the subsequent slides. So the research design that I adopted here was that of an ethnographic approach, because my purpose was to learn about, record, and portray this culture in a manner that was going to be very fair and sufficiently detailed enough to provide insights, because we had to contribute to increasing knowledge and understanding about this community. So I had to be very careful that what I observe, I write about it in a very sensitive and fair way about this culture. Okay, you can't explain any culture, but you can only observe it. And how well you observe it, again, it depends on your methods. It depends on how much you embed yourself over there. So in that sense, this was not completely ethnographic, because I was not able to go and embed myself with these families for a long time, but I was a participant observer. I was watching from a distance and making my notes to understand this culture. The second approach that I had adopted was that of a feminist approach. Now, why feminism? Was because I purely went on the definition of feminism, which said Feminism focuses on injustices as they have historically developed and they continue to exist in our society. That was the whole basis of this research. Now, the same author Winters also proposed a 3-point definition, which again resonated very strongly with this research, which was first, all women have something very important to contribute to the society. Second, because of the oppression that women face, they are unable to develop their full potential of participating in various aspects in the society, because of which, they're forced to wear a mask. And thirdly, all feminists believe that this kind of oppression and inequality needs to disappear from all sections of society globally. Now, I agreed with this very strongly, and I thought that for this study, this approach would be the most ideal approach. Now, when you're trying to understand the lives of women or the lives of a particular culture, it's a lot of aspects that are coming into play here. You cannot just say, okay, you can't understand a woman's life very individually. You got to look at how she interacts with other members of her society. There are a lot of aspects there. How is her interaction with her husband, her in-laws, her children? What is her standing within the family? Is she capable of, or is she allowed to take decisions within the family? Whether it's domestic decisions, financial decisions, decisions related to her children. How is she treated by her husband and her in laws, or as a matter of fact, even by her children? So, all these things contribute to an understanding of the culture as well as an understanding of the woman's life. So, that is why I adopted a feminist ethnographic approach. Sorry. Now, I used a mixed methods approach, which basically means I used a combination of data collection instruments such as semi-structured questionnaires, semi-structured interviews, and observations of cultural setups wherever possible. Now, this was done to gain first-hand information about these women's lives, as well as also give them the freedom to express their views with as much honesty and frankness as possible. See, with this kind of a population, now when I say this kind of a population, I mean a sensitive or a vulnerable population, or somebody whom you believe could be in a disadvantaged position. Using just one method of data collection may not really help. So it is better to use a combination. If I had to just send out questionnaires, I probably would not even have got half of them back. Or even if I got them back, I would have got very basic information from it. Just probably the demographic information, or wherever there were close ended questions, I would have got the responses, which would not contribute to the information that I was looking out for. At the same time, if I was going to use only interviews, I would not get the basic information that I was looking out for. So it was ideal to use a combination of the two. Now, I say observations within their cultural setup wherever possible. The reason I say wherever possible is because when I designed my research instruments and when I decided that, how I was going to go about this study, I wanted to go and sit with the participants individually in their domestic setups and interview them so that I could get an understanding of their, family life, culture, and make my field notes. Unfortunately, this backfired to a certain extent because after the women gave me consent to be interviewed, some of them realized that it would not be safe for them for me to go into their house and interview them because they had not informed their family members that they were going to be a part of a research of this nature. So they called and told me that we would not like you to come into our house. So is there any other way of doing this interview? So that is when I had to devise, another method, which was going to be the telephonic interview, which I'll come to in a while. The second reason I could not make observations or go to their places was because of the distances. Long distances, long hours of travel, again did not make it feasible for me to go. So wherever possible, I made my field notes. Where it was not possible, I only relied on the questionnaires and the interview data. Next slide, Rajesh. So moving on to the sample selection. Now, sorry, I had a purposive sample of about 120 women. That is, excuse me. I sent out questionnaires to about 120 women of the Devanga community. Now, how did I select and why do I call it a purposive sample? Is because I clearly knew that first, it had to be women of the community. Second, all these women needed to have children of both the genders. The reason I say both the genders is because if you remember the title of my study as well as my research questions, I wanted to see if these women are making different provisions for their sons and daughters. That was the reason I insisted on both the gender children, for these women. And third, I had fixed an age group of 25 to 60 years for all my participants. Now, I could have fixed a lower age group also because girls within this community are married as early as 15 or 16, some of them. But if I had fixed a lower age group, they may or may not have had children who are old enough for them to give me the data that I was looking out for. So that is why I decided to fix it at 25 to 60. So I would also get a wide range of perspectives from these women. Now, based on the responses that I got in my questionnaire, I was able to segregate these women based on their educational qualifications. So, the first category was women who had completed grade 12 or gone beyond. The second was women who had dropped out of school early, either by themselves or because of compulsion. Now, again, I stress on this because girls, once they attain puberty, are discouraged to continue with their schooling, or maximum they are allowed to continue and finish their grade 10 or grade 12, after which they are made to stay at home to focus on the domestic chores and activities. So education is not really given importance over here. And the third category was women who had never attended school. Now, there was also a small percentage of women who had zero fluency in English. And when did I find this out? When I piloted my research instruments. So, when I piloted my questionnaire, that lady told me that, most of the population may not understand questionnaires in English. So, I think you should send it out in the local language, which is Kannada. So, I had to get all my questionnaires translated into Kannada and then get them distributed. Similarly, the interview questions were also translated in Kannada, and most of the interviews were conducted in that language itself. Though some of the women were comfortable and fluent in English, but I think it was a matter of comfort and rapport building that they wanted to be interviewed in the local language itself, which was fine as long as I got my data. Next slide, Rajesh. Now, the reason I used questionnaires was first, it is an exploratory instrument used in phase 1 to get a wide variety, to get a wide range of the demographic information. Also helped me to decide who are the women who can be, included in phase 2 of the study. Now, this questionnaire was semi-structured. The first half of it was close-ended questions, and the second half of it was open-ended questions. And it was made in such a way that none of the participants found it offensive or oversensitive. They found it pretty easy to answer it. So the first 15 questions focused only on these women's childhood lives. Like I told you when I explained the research questions, it focused only on their schooling and their sibling schooling, their extracurricular activities. These were all close-ended questions. And the next 16 focused on these women's marital life. So at what age did they get married? How many years after they got married did they have their children? How old are their children? What kind of family setups do these women live in? Now, this question was very important because members of the Devanga community still are not very comfortable with the concept of nuclear family. They still believe that, we should live in joint families and the daughters-in-laws must take care and cook and clean for the entire family. Okay, so that again was important because the presence of the in-laws or extended family members had a huge role to play on the woman's decision-making ability and her position within the family. So based on the responses, like I said, they were categorized into 3 groups. Now, when I say I categorize these women based on their qualifications, it was not done to discriminate the women or to, make anybody feel bad. I only categorize them to see that the women who have been educated, is there any difference in their beliefs or in their principles or ideologies when compared to the women who have not gone to school? That was the only reason for categorizing them. Next slide, Rajesh. So why interviews? Now, interviews was obviously the phase 2, and it helped me seek in-depth information, what I was looking out for. Now, the interviews were designed in such a way that from where the questionnaire questions ended, that is where the interview questions took off from. So the participants already knew what they were getting into. Okay, they had comfortably answered the questionnaire, and then they very seamlessly transitioned into the interview phase also. So it also gave the participants the freedom to steer the discussion to whatever issues they wanted to talk about within the boundary of this or within the framework of this research. It was a very reflective journey for the participants. For some, it was an extremely emotional journey as well, because they were talking about their childhood and their marital life. And probably for some of them, it was a very negative experience because, they had probably tucked away things that they did not want to remember again. But here they were, because they had been given the freedom to talk. They were feeling important that someone was asking them about their life, that they completely took charge of the interview and they spoke with their hearts and minds open. So the progression of the interview questions was also in such a way that the participants felt comfortable. None of the questions were, intrusive or offensive to any of them. Now here, my positionality as a researcher also came into play. Now, when I say my positionality, what I mean is, see, being a member of the Devanga community, I became an insider to the researched population. But I also come from a family which is very forward thinking, very unorthodox, and very liberal in their thought process. So I don't quite understand what it means to be suppressed, or not what it means to be discriminated against. So that made me an outsider to this population. But here, only because I believe I'm a woman and the researched population were also women, there was a level of comfort and rapport that was established right from the beginning, and the women were very comfortable talking to me about their lives. So my positionality here was very important. Next slide, Rajesh. So looking at the response rate, see, I sent out 120 questionnaires and I got back 96 with consent forms signed, information sheets read and understood, and questionnaires completely filled and returned. Out of these 96 women who returned the questionnaires, 75 of them had consented to being interviewed. But I was not able to interview all these 75 because 5 of them withdrew consent because they believed, or rather, they thought that they were going to be interviewed on a public platform. They somehow had completely misunderstood the concept of confidentiality. And I did not want to convince them because that is not really ethical to do. So once they withdrew consent, I did not push. 3 more women had only consented just for the fun of being interviewed. So finally, I ended up interviewing 63 women. Out of these 63, I did 42 face-to-face interviews and 21 telephonic interviews. The reason for doing telephonic interviews, I told you previously, was because these women were not comfortable with me going and interviewing them in their personal space. Okay, so that's why I did it telephonically, and it actually proved advantageous because not being able to see my face helped these women open up to me faster. They were able to confide very easily. They were able to talk for almost 45 minutes to 1 hour without any hesitation. So that really worked to my advantage. The only thing was, yes, I could not make any observations about their body language, but whatever little I could hear, suppose there was a male member walking in, and if there was some level of unease, or the participant said that, okay, someone's come in, I'm going to call you back later, those kind of things I did make a note of. Next slide, Rajesh. Okay. So coming to the data analysis bit of it. Now, data analysis is very important because it is a process where you gather information, you structure it, and then finally you interpret it to understand what it's trying to convey to you. Okay, so it has to be a very systematic and an organized process. Now, in qualitative research, you don't focus on numbers only, you focus more on the meanings. And when I say meanings, I mean your data is coming in a very unstructured format. So you're getting in data from interviews, audio recordings, probably video recordings, field notes. So there is a lot of it coming in, and it can seem quite overwhelming at the beginning if you're not able to organize it down. Now, field notes play a very important role, and I think even Ratika had stressed that in her previous presentation, that when you are interviewing or when you are with a participant, it is very important to keep making notes every time you observe something. Just to give you an example of this, um, one of the male members of the community had arranged a meeting for me to meet his wife as well as four other women for the questionnaires and the interviews. So when I went there, I was able to finish the questionnaires with all these five women and interview the other four women. But when it came to interviewing this man's wife, we went into a room. She closed the door immediately, and she told me, I was just about to switch on my audio recorder, and she told me, don't audio record me. So I said, okay, because I could already observe a change in her behavior and body language. She was almost shivering. She didn't seem very comfortable, but she wanted to talk. And I did not want to say anything or do anything which would make her back off, because I could already sense that what I was going to get would be very valuable. So, I just told her, okay, go ahead and tell me whatever you need to. She spoke for about 20 to 30 minutes. She spoke everything that I would have asked her in the interview. And what she told me was that ever since she got married, which was, I think, at 13 years or 14 years of age, she had been a victim of physical and psychological abuse at the hands of her husband. And later, when her children were born, even at the hands of her children. Now, she has two daughters and one son, all of whom are very well educated. You wouldn't expect this kind of behavior there, but it was happening. The family had together portrayed this woman to be mentally unstable to everybody else who knew this family. So one day, when this lady got so fed up and frustrated that she ran away from home, but she was caught by the cops and brought back because they said she is not okay mentally. Now, what happens to a person like this who has no support from her parents, who does not have any kind of educational qualification? Where is she supposed to go? Now, this information was all coming to me verbally. I was not able to record it. I was not able to make any notes over there because she just wanted my attention 100%. So she spoke to me. I walked out of the room. The minute I came home, I quickly jotted down everything that I could remember, what she had told me, as well as her behavior. Now, what would I do? Could I count this as data? Because I didn't have a recording of it. I only had her questionnaire. What would I do? It was very valuable information. So I kept that data with me. Okay, I didn't do anything to it. I just kept it and said, okay, let's see when I can use it. Another instance where I was doing a telephonic interview to this with this lady, and while she was answering me, I was audio recording. While she was answering me, I suddenly hear her husband stopping her, and he started answering on her behalf. Now, I was not able to stop the interview but it was almost like 75% of the questions were answered by the husband and 25% was answered by the wife. Wherever the wife was trying to answer with honesty, the husband said, no, 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 that's not how it is. And he would answer for her. Now, again, what do I do with this data? I can't discard it, but it's important for me. So, again, I made my notes. Whatever audio recording I had, I transcribed it and I kept it aside. So, the point I'm trying to make is any observation, anything to do during your data collection is very valuable. Do not let it go, do not discard it. You will not know when you're going to need it at a later stage. Okay. Next slide, Rajesh. Okay. Now coming to the first part of the data analysis, which is segmentation. Now this has got to do only with my interview data. Every interview that I conducted, I came back home and transcribed it. So I transcribed it verbatim. The reason I did it verbatim was because most of them were done in the local language. And if I was going to transcribe it in a contextual way, I was scared that I would lose the actual essence of what was said. Okay, so as I heard, I put it down in English. So I will show you a sample of one of the transcripts, and you may feel that the language is a little, it's not okay, it's not grammatically correct, but this is the reason for it. The focus is not on the language, the focus is on the essence of the data. So once I transcribed it in a tabular format, it became more manageable. It also increased my familiarity with the data. It kind of, made it seem more manageable, and that's what is known as data segmenting. Okay, so once I did that, I started looking at the responses and kept revisiting my research questions. Next slide, Rajesh. This is what I did to my research questions. I color coded them. So all the responses that would have pertained to the first research question would all be put in red. All responses pertaining to the second would be purple and the third ones would be green. Rajesh, next slide. Yeah, so if you can see here, this is just a sample from one of the interviews. So the first one is only the first research question. So just read through it and then I'll explain. Okay. Rajesh, can you just go to the previous slide, please? Yeah. Now, if you look at the first research question, it talks about the childhood experiences of these women. Next slide, Rajesh. Yeah. So now if you see here, this woman is telling me, we were slightly poor, had not seen luxuries. My parents gave slightly high class education to my brothers, but got me low class education. So she is clearly, these are important aspects of her childhood that are getting highlighted over here. And similarly, the second one is pertaining to the second research question. Now, another point to be kept in mind here is every interview may not give you responses to all your research questions. You may have some interviews which are only answering one or two of your research questions. That does not mean that you do not consider that interview. Okay, you are still getting a lot of information from there. Any information is important information, so please do not discard anything. Okay, Rajesh, next slide. Okay, so now you know that I color coded them according to the research questions. I color coded all the responses. Okay, so all my interviews looked extremely colorful at the end of it. I had red, purple, and green staring at me. Now, after that came the process of coding. Coding is very important to decontextualize your information because you have to be able to understand the transcripts and then assign codes. Now, codes are not assigned referring to any kind of literature. It is what you understand from the responses and how you want to define and give it a code. Okay, so you read through the interview transcripts and then you break it apart and you decontextualize it. For example, Rajesh, can you go to the next slide, please? Yes. So if you see here, this woman said we were slightly poor. So that meant she had experienced poverty in her childhood. So I gave it a code as CEP. Now, after that, she also says that my parents got my brothers educated very well, but they did not let me complete my graduation, which meant she had also experienced gender bias in her childhood education. So, there I gave another code as GBCE. Okay, this was only for my understanding. Similarly, to the second research question, which spoke about do women have different expectations or do they make different provisions for their sons and daughters? This lady said we should understand what is in their mind, that is in their children's mind, so that we can encourage them in what they like. So I interpreted it as she is allowing her children to take their own decisions. So there is no extra provision made for daughters' education, which probably means that they have no differing expectations. It's all the same for their sons and daughters. Okay, this was my interpretation, my understanding, and my process of coding. Next slide, Rajesh. So these were just some of the codes that I gave during the process. I almost had a list of, I think, 50 codes by the end of this process. It was going to reduce further. Once you all finish reading, please let me know and we'll go to the next slide. Can we proceed? Okay. Now the next process that had to start was collapsing these codes. Now I had about 50, 55 odd codes. What would I do with so many codes? Now the data seemed again overwhelming. So once all these interviews were transcribed, segmented, and coded, I began identifying clusters of overlapping codes and I started reducing them to a more manageable number. Now, how I did this was all the codes that pertained to the first research question, I put them down in. So basically, I opened another document. I opened three columns. The first column had all red codes, that is, everything related to the first research question. The middle column had all the purple codes. And the final column had all the green codes. So now everything was in one document wherein I could look at it and say, okay, which are the overlapping codes now? Okay, so that brought it down to a smaller number. Probably about 7, 8 codes got eliminated right there. From there, Rajesh, next slide, please. Now that was the grouping of codes. After that, under each research question, I started identifying positive codes and negative codes because that would finally help me in discussing the data that I had got. So positive codes were the ones related to all the positive aspects related to the participants. Like, for example, in the first research question, if they had told me that their parents had made absolutely no distinction between them and their brothers. So that was a positive code. Secondly, if they said that we were encouraged to pursue all the extracurricular activities that we wanted to, that was again a positive code. Negative codes were something like gender bias in their childhood education, or not being encouraged to take up anything, or experiencing poverty because of which they could not study further. Okay, so that again brought down the number a little bit. Now, when you do coding or collapsing codes, you might feel at some time that one research question has more codes than the other research question, and it seems a little off balance. Okay, that can be a little intimidating, but it's okay. It's as long as all your information, all your codes are there, it's fine. Okay, that's how it was even for me because my first research question had several codes and a lot to discuss. Whereas my second research question was minimal. If you compare it to the first one, there wasn't too much. Because also here, there will be overlapping aspects coming in. You know, when you're talking about a woman's life, her childhood experiences spill over to her marital life, that spills over to her own, ideas of self-esteem and her role in the society. So there's also a lot of overlap that you're going to be discussing. Now, just because there is an overlap, again, you can't say that I discussed it under the first question, I will not bring it in the second question. That cannot be done. So you will have to keep mentioning time and again. At least that's what I did. That yes, there are some repeats, there are overlaps, but to make it convenient for the reader, I am discussing it. Okay, so if there is a slight imbalance, I don't think there's anything to be worried about there. Next slide, Rajesh. So the next one was what we call as the thematic analysis. Now I had my positive negative codes. Before that I had codes according to the research questions. Before that I had done segmenting. Now what I needed to do was I needed to arrive at themes. The easiest thing to do for me was to make each research question into a theme. Okay, so my first one became childhood experiences of women, second one became expectations from children, and the third one became role and status in the society. Next, Rajesh. Okay, now that was all to do with my interview data. Now, what did I do with my questionnaire data? My questionnaire, I had 96 questionnaires. So each question was tabulated like this, and wherever I was discussing, like the first research question, all the questions that pertain to that question were brought in there and discussed. So if you look at this one question, it talks about how many years the participant attended school. Up to 5th grade, it was just 11. Up to 10th grade, 54. Up to 12th grade, 18. Beginning of graduation, only one because she was married after that. Completed graduation, 10. And no response was again 2. So this was done to all the questions in the questionnaire. And they were accordingly discussed according to the research questions and the themes. Next one, Rajesh. So coming to the interpretation of this data. See, the themes were further broken down into sub-themes to help in analyzing, interpreting, and discussing. Now, these sub-themes came from the codes that I had given. Okay, now this is my third research question / theme. So that was the role and status in society. And the sub-themes that came up were these. Rather, these were my findings. So fighting against odds, thus becoming independent and self-reliant. This was because a couple of women had told me that because they had got no support from their families and they had lost their husbands at a young age, they had to do all kinds of odd jobs to be able to raise their children because they did not have any kind of educational qualification to go and work in a stable job. Also, within this community, women are not encouraged to go out and work. So even if you look at that population of women who've completed their graduation, none of them are working. They are all homemakers. So that is where the question arises, where these educated women also, asked me, see, we are educated, but we are at home. Why should we encourage our daughters to get educated? Because eventually they're going to stay at home. Okay, so that is what my first theme became. And this also overlapped with my previous question. Previous research question, which was, are women able to understand the importance of education and are they able to provide equal opportunities for their sons and daughters? So that was a finding that was discussed in both the questions. The second was desire to be treated with respect and dignity and be given equal opportunities as men. This was something that I think 90% of the population said, and they said this is never going to happen within this community because the men will never understand our importance, and we are never going to be treated with dignity. When we are not given the freedom to even dress the way we want, how can we expect anything else? Okay, so that spoke about their role within the family as well as the society. The third one was the lack of freedom to express or take independent decisions. They were not allowed to even decide to probably visit their parents' homes or go out with their friends. There was one participant who told me, she was, I think, 42 years old, and she said her husband does not even allow her to go out and buy groceries or vegetables because he's scared that if she steps out, her mind is going to get corrupted or polluted. So he keeps her at home. And when she tries to tell him that, I need to go, he hits her. So there is a lack of freedom there. There's a lack of support from the spouse and ill treatment of women. Now, ill treatment of women does not only mean physical abuse. That one case that I spoke to you about was probably the only case of physical abuse. Um, but otherwise, it's just psychological abuse and trauma that most of these women have gone through. And they have no support or nobody to turn to for help. And finally, there is one positive finding in this, which was encouragement from spouse. So there are a few husbands of these participants who do understand that their wives need to lead a better life and have decided to move away from the joint family setup so that they are able to decide and give their children and wives a better life in the future. Okay, next slide, Rajesh. So in the discussions bit of it, um, discussion could be done in two ways. One was either you discuss every sub theme and then connect it with the main theme, which is what I did, or you could discuss only the theme with the sub themes interspersed into it, wherein it also becomes easier to discuss the overlapping findings. So both ways are okay. It depends on your convenience. Now, like I said, overlapping findings may lead to repetition, but it is important to represent all your data. Otherwise, it also becomes difficult to correlate the numbers. See, if you're not going to, suppose there's a question which does not have a response, you can't not mention it because then your final number does not tally. So if you saw in the slide wherein I had put the questionnaire data, Rajesh, can we go back to that, please? Back? Yes. I said here no response, and this has been mentioned in the discussions chapter because otherwise the total just does not add up and it becomes difficult to explain that gap later. Yes, Rajesh, you can go back. Next slide. Okay. So the conclusions to my study was that women's status continues to remain paradoxical, though it is improving slowly. The conclusions I'm talking about here are only related to this study. I am not making any general statements. It's only with keeping the data that I got in mind. Poverty seems to be the largest dominant factor which acted as a barrier to providing these girls with with educational opportunities. In some cases, it was probably given as an excuse, but in some cases, it was also genuine. Stereotypical norms and beliefs somehow seems to have found its way very comfortably, and it's lodged in this community in the male members. It's difficult to bring in a change. Um, Women do have high aspirations for their daughters, but they still succumb to societal pressures because they are scared. Um, they understand the value and importance of education, but they do not have the courage or the support to stand up for it. So we come back to the big question that do our community norms take precedence over individual preferences? And that is where, when the women said that, what are we going to do with encouraging our daughters to work when her final destination or her role just lies within the house? It's a difficult thing to explain. Change is definitely happening. People are trying to move out of this traditional mindset and belief, but the process is extremely slow because it is several generations whose mindsets need to change. As a community, as an entire setup, the ideology needs to change. Okay. Yes, Rajesh, next slide. So the future work that I'd be really interested to do with this community would be to research on other Devanga communities in India to see whether this kind of patriarchal beliefs, norms, son preference, is it only in the Karnataka Devangas or is it also prevalent in other Devanga communities in the other states? Second, I would be really interested to do some research on the male members of this community to understand their thought process and belief system. And finally, it's important to build support groups because I feel that is what is needed to empower the women of this group of people. Yes, and I think that's it. Yes, thank you. Any questions?
Well done, Pooja. That was an excellent presentation. Very clear, very concise, and very informative. So let's hand over to everybody in the audience there to see if anyone has any questions for you.
Okay.
Datika, yeah, I just joined a little bit late, 5-10 minutes, rather more than that. So I want to know which area of India did you have your research work? I just want to know this. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes. Am I audible
Yes.
now?
Yes,
Okay, so this research was conducted in Bangalore.
in Bangalore.
Yes, and it was completely an urban population.
So I think it was natural. When you read all this, when you know about all this research and all that, you come, you have, just we can say, you confirm your opinion that most of the women in India are like that. I don't think it is that, because in my knowledge, if we can't think about this with general population of our country, all the women of a country, in northern India, women are progressing. And I don't think there is that discrimination, because they know that they how to assert their rights. I think so. And in South, most of the people used to be educated in the time of the Britishers, as far as I have come to know, because I was a small child when I went there, and I did not find any such type of discrimination of it there between many girls were there in our class. I never heard about all this from them. That is why I'm surprised today. That's why I asked you which area of India was it, because there people, most of the ladies talk in English, because they don't talk in their regional language, educated class. So maybe that you are talking about the village side, then it is natural. In northern India, in central India also, things are the same as you are saying. In villages, women are not getting that much education in spite of so much awareness spread by our government, spread by NGOs and everybody. So that is the difference. That is why I wanted to know. Yes.
Neelaman, just to clarify, when I said I am making the statement, I did not make it for the entire women population of India. I said
Yes.
this is only restricted to this community. And secondly, this was an urban population, which made it all the more, revealing and surprising, because you wouldn't expect to see it.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I
Yes.
believe made this study unique in its own way.
Yes. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. In rural India, even in UP also, it is the same story. I have heard that these women become representatives of the panchayat and all that, leaders of the panchayat, and they don't have any say. Their husbands have their say. You might have read in the stories. I have also read some stories, and there also it is that men talk on their behalf. Men take the finances by the government. Men do all that, and they are just we can say in when the signing authority is there, only then they just yes, whatever their husband say. This is what happens in many parts of countries still, even now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good, very good presentation. Very good.
Thank you so much. Did I put everyone to sleep? I don't.
It was brilliant, Pooja. Really well done.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you, Ratika.
You are a good teacher too, I realized today. The way you took it through and the way you kind of had your pauses in the right places, and know what we learn in the ideal teaching. I saw it in you today, Pooja, in addition to being a good researcher. So
Thank you so
clear,
much, ma'am.
so clear. Even a person who is at the very elementary stage of trying to learn what is research would have thoroughly understood everything about this qualitative research. The way you took took it through very concise, and you maintained time, and you held the attention. I was all the way through admiring.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, really. Since
Thank
I
you.
read your draft, I knew what
Yeah.
was in it, but in your presentation, I learned more than what I read, because the way you interpreted as you spoke
Hmm.
was much more insightful.
I
And
think
yeah,
as we read it every time, we learn something new, no, out of our own work.
fantastic, very
Thank you,
good.
ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and communities like this need to be studied and see whether the community as such has some deep rooted beliefs or values that manifest like this. Different communities, Devanga community, we found this even in the urban area. Like perhaps each of those communities where women are, suppressed, uh, what is the core of it? Like, what is it that makes the rest of the population manifest it in a manner that the women are kept suppressed? It's something very interesting that you began with one community, and I saw all the difficulties you have gone through in getting the information, and also people not liking you, right? You told me once while talking, because you are gathering such information that can be derogatory to the men, so they didn't like all that. You're very brave work, really. So good listening
Thank you,
to you.
ma'am. Thank you.
So good listening to you.
Thank you so much.
Brave work, I must say, going to those areas. Very brave of you.
Thank you, Neela, ma'am.
Richard,
Richard,
we can't hear
you're
you.
muted, Richard.
Pooja, you said earlier on that you were thinking of expanding this research and following it up. Could you say a little bit more about that, about how you might do it? And maybe there's somebody sitting listening at the moment who thinks that they could actually join you in collecting some data to do that.
So I did start trying to collect more data on women who were married before the age of 18 years. Unfortunately, I did not get a lot of cooperation from the participants, also because now the only way of reaching out to them is through telephone. I think if I could gain access to them physically, it would be different. The reason I wanted to do this study was because so many of them got married before they attained the legal age, and there is no way that they've gone and registered themselves. So it would be interesting to understand this particular phenomena as to why does this happen, and is it changing now? Because it's now almost 4 years or 5 years since I've collected data for this research, and now I want to see if there is a shift, even if it is a slight one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to restrict this to only the Devanga community, or you want to expand it further?
So initially, I wanted to expand it to the Devanga communities in the other states.
Yeah.
Okay, but then I don't think that's going to be possible right now. So I also did collaborate with a person in Haryana and tried to get information from his part of the state so that I could do like a comparative study or
Yeah.
something like that. Unfortunately, even that didn't work out. Women backed out. Just 3 women gave information, and after that, they were not ready to talk. Yeah. So I would like
Really,
to extend it to other communities in Bangalore.
because the instruments are already developed, it wouldn't be too difficult for other people to use your instruments to collect data from their own communities, would it? I mean, obviously, the language issue might be different. So they might have to translate into Marathi or Telugu or something. But it would be possible, I would think, Pooja, for you to share your instruments with people who are willing to collect data to do some kind of comparative study with you, wouldn't it?
Sure, I would love to do that.
Yeah. Perhaps there's somebody sitting here now who might think they would be able to do that. Is there anybody listening to Pooja today who thinks this is interesting? They could collect some data, similar data in their own area. It wouldn't have to be a large scale study, I wouldn't think. Everybody's gone quiet. Rajesh, do you know of people in Tamil Nadu who could assist with this, for instance?
I think, sir, few members would definitely be interested in doing taking up the research further. I think there are certain communities wherein this type of studies can be undertaken in Tamil Nadu. So maybe some of us can take up the thing and can work on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just looking at the participants there, I've been looking at the list. I don't know where you all come from, but obviously we've got representation from Tamil Nadu, from Andhra Pradesh, I think, certainly from Telangana, and from West Bengal. So there must be other people who might be able to do some small study to work with Pooja here. And as you've heard, she's a very competent researcher and very knowledgeable in this area, and I'm sure she'd be very supportive of anybody working along with you.
I think one of the reasons why they are hesitant is that all our participants are from the area of disability rehabilitation. So
Yeah,
suddenly shifting to something which is also important in terms of marginalizing a group of people, you know. So
Yeah.
from that angle, they really become part of this study also if they wish to. But they are hesitant, I feel. I can be wrong. I feel that they are hesitating because this is not my area kind of thinking maybe in them. And I want to tell those who are thinking that way that this also is a marginalized community that we are talking about, you know, women suppression. So it will be nice if any of you want to learn more from Pooja and do a comparative study. Maybe another community where women are suppressed as you think, and then compare both can be one. Or same Devanga community in another state, Pooja's wish, that is, another state, and then see what and how they are going. May you would prefer the metropolitan city, like right, Pooja? Then only the sample will be matching.
Yes, ma'am, exactly.
Mm,
I
mm,
would want an urban group only.
mm, mm.
May I make a suggestion? Perhaps on the IIRN website, there could be a little request for anybody who wants to work with Pooja in this way. Perhaps if Pooja wrote something to go onto the website so that all the members could see it, and maybe a little detail of what that would involve, that might be a useful way forward.
I think that's a good idea, so that those who did not attend today will be able to see that and react.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, that will be a good idea, I think, to put it up, Rajesh.
Okay.
24 hours, Rajesh would do it. He is always so fast. Given something to do, he always does it so fast. Yeah.
So, Rajesh, I've noted the time. I should check in 24 hours to see if it's there. I think, you know, what all it remains for me to do, and then I'm going to hand over to Rajesh and maybe Pooja Ratika to talk about the next session on the program. But what it remains for me to do is just to say thank you very much to Pooja for what was an excellent presentation, much as I'd expected it would be. And to say thank you for everybody for attending and listening to what she had to say. And
There is a question. There's a hand
encourage
that
all
you
your
can-
friends to come aboard and look at the YouTube presentation that I think Rajesh has just put up. So I'll hand back over to Rajesh, Pooja, and Ratika to finish off.
So there are two questions, I think.
Yeah.
Shabnam and Revati have raised their hands, so maybe they can unmute and
Yeah.
go ahead with their query.
Okay. Hello, ma'am. Hello, everyone. This is Shabnam. So Pooja, ma'am, it was a very insightful and very powerful presentation, I would say. Uh, I'm a psychologist and I use narrative practices in my therapies. So when I was listening to your presentation, so I was also listening to the stories that those respondents has shared with you, and I can feel like how difficult it is to collect such in-depth information, especially when you are doing a qualitative research. I would like to know, ma'am, like when you said, like sometimes as during your data collection, that you feel that these women, they are not safe. I mean, they are, they are in that fear state, like how to reach out to you, and sometimes they had upper hand from their husband, like they would like to talk instead of them. So, I would like to know from a researcher point of view, as your own experience, like how, as a qualitative researcher, you have made your own safety circle. I mean, how did you made as a researcher? How could we save ourselves when we are doing such community researches?
See, I did not have any kind of safety issues here because when I set about this research, my first step to gain access to this sample itself was because I approached the community leader.
Okay.
Okay, so once he assured me that I could go ahead with this study,
Mm-hmm.
that is when I went ahead. Now, this was also sent across as a newsletter, as a community newsletter. So everybody knew that this leader knows about me doing the study. So there was no question of my safety over here. Wherever we felt that the male member of the house would not approve, or even the participant would be in danger,
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to the participant only if she said it was okay to do a
Mm-hmm.
telephonic interview, or if she said, no, I am backing off. I just did not push it because more than my safety, it was her safety. She has to
Okay.
continue living in that setup. It's not me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Most of these male members do not even know me. And the ones who do are within, the first or the second circle. They may or may not be aware of this research that I conducted, but um, other than a couple of them who were not very happy, I did not have any other issues. But I think Ratika, I think you had something like this, right? Save your safety or.
Yeah, my mentor's it was a bit like yours because I had the Zilla Parishad head. I had permission from them, and I also had they had a community liaison officer at the school, at the NGO school, who had very good links to the community, and they trusted him. So, and the difference between your research and my research was that I had actually moved to this rural setting, and I was there for about 10 days, and then I was going to go away from there. So it was, I wasn't based in that village or even in that country for that matter. So I think maybe the risk were a little limited to that extent, and because I had the community liaison officer who accompanied me for most of the interviews, most of the formal interviews, only observations I did on my own. So I think my situation was a little less, intimidating than maybe yours might have been, I think. I'm not sure.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pooja ma'am and Ratika ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shabnam.
I think Ravati has a hand raised. Do you want to come in?
Yes, sir. Good evening to all. Hi, ma'am. It was very interesting, ma'am, to know about such kind of research from the beginning. It was every slide was very interesting to know more about your research topic, and you explained very well clearly. So, I think it is very useful for me. Like a beginner, we can say a beginner. It was very useful to us. Like I had one question first. I think now you have answered to Sapnam. So the thing was how you have connected these many people. Like you have mentioned 96 population that you have collected for your study. So how you have connected these many people? What was the trick or any strategy that you have used to collect the information from the people?
Thank you, Revati. That I like that when you say what was the trick or the strategy, because yeah, it literally felt like that. So initially, I used to attend all social functions with my bag of questionnaires. Okay, wherever knew I'm going to find women, I used to get my questionnaires filled up, and then I would get the time and date with them for the interviews. But after a certain time, this stopped. I stopped getting responses. So that's when I started opening the community databases. They basically maintain a list of all the women who come into the community hall or center. I started calling them. The community leader had sent out newsletters, so people started getting to know about this research, and also through word of mouth it started spreading. One or two ladies were very helpful to me because they took almost 15 or 20 questionnaires and they said, we will distribute it for you and we will get it filled up. So,
Okay.
despite that, because I actually was looking at a response rate of 120 or 130, but I got back only 96. So, I was actually disappointed there.
Okay.
But now I feel it was a good representation, whatever
Yes.
numbers I had,
Yeah.
it was good.
Yes. It was a great number, ma'am, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, when I sat to interpret it, it was pretty huge.
Yes, yes. One more, ma'am.
Yes.
Now I had you have done the questionnaire and the interview. So whether you have also mentioned that you have used mixed method research. So in mixed method research, we have the option of simultaneously concurrent. So how that you had made this both together, or how that was happened? You have mentioned like some of the participants that you have used questionnaire and for some interview. So how it was?
No, no, I used questionnaires for everybody.
Okay.
And all those who consented to be interviewed came into phase two.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So
The
questionnaire
same
was
participant who are interested to give take up the interview, they can further.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. But
Thank you
they
so
also
much.
had to fit into that criteria, that age group, 25 to 60 years. So that was the segregation that I did when I got all the questionnaires back.
Okay.
So apart from their consent, it was also this criteria, and whoever fit in were interviewed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Revati.
Thank you, all the members for organizing, this sessions for us. It was very useful for everyone, I hope. Thank you, Rajesh sir, Madam, Richard Rose sir, everyone. Thank you.
Pooja, you said that for every social function you would go with your questionnaire. Is it that this community had a lot of uh, social gathering exclusively for the community people? And what kind of social gathering that would be?
All sorts of weddings,
Oh,
engagements,
that way.
everything. Yeah, yeah.
So
And
there
there,
will be non-Devanga people also, no? But you will find out who belong to
no,
Devanga.
so when I gave the questionnaire, I would ask and give it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, I wouldn't send it out. This problem arose when questionnaires were sent out.
Ah.
Like, these women said, give me 20 questionnaires, I'll send it out. So
Hmm.
then when I got it back, I would actually call these women and ask them, are
Hmm.
you a member of the community? If they said no, I did not use that data.
Okay, so you did get responses from outside the community
Yes,
also.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I did get.
Okay, interesting. I was going to make two comments at the end after Pooja's brilliant presentation is over. One was that participant, please be participatory, more participatory. That comment I am not making, thanks to Shabnam and Revati. Even before I could make the comment, they participated. I only amended to say more and more of our participants, please be interactive, you see, so that all of us learn. If one person asks a question, the rest of us also learn from the response that the speaker gives. So I request that be more interactive and participatory. The second comment, I don't know, I have to ask Rajesh for how many more months we have volunteer speakers, and then also request you to volunteer to be the speaker so that there is no discontinuity in this chain. I thank all of those who have been Richard's PhD scholars to have come forward to be the first ones to present. And there are two more to go, Rajesh. I don't know. Can you tell me how many more? Uh,
Yes, ma'am. As per the calendar that we had prepared, we had on 7th February we have one, and on 7th March actually we had decided one. But that 7th March only confirmation we have to get it from I think Pooja madam and Ratika madam, and then maybe
who are they? That is Sulata and Sumati, is it?
no, ma'am, on 7th March actually we had thought of having Dr. Sumati and Dr. Nitika presenting.
Okay.
We need to check with Dr. Nitika because.
Okay. So you have until March.
Until March we had planned.
But can we request now, Richard, that we request for volunteers to have the presentations for April, May onwards, so that we don't have a discontinuity in this chain. This is really, really very helpful. All of us learn, and I'm sure our number of persons also will increase in this process as we continue to go. And I thank all of those who have been presenting brilliant and so much of learning. Oh, is that so? Kind of moments I get in between as I listen. It's fantastic. I'm sure everybody's going through that. So as not to have a break, if we can float it now itself, who would opt for and taking that until March we have somebody to speak. April, May, June, July, can we request? Maybe Rajesh can be one also. Just completed his PhD and he may want to share that. And I spoke to him. He says he wants to do the defense also, and then he'll be more confident to speak. So he just wants that his defense is also over. How about the other 13 other participants who are with us, quieter?
Yes, I'm sure there are people out there who are doing very good work who we could all learn from. So maybe people are a bit shy about saying now, but they can contact directly. They can contact Rajesh or anybody really and
That
say
would be really, really nice. It need not necessarily be only PhD that topic you have done. It could be any research that you have done that will be of interest to us. Please please share with us. We'll be happy to learn from it also. Not necessarily only the PhD work. All of you have been doing, and not necessarily also only qualitative. I think it can be mixed methods, it can be quantitative, whatever you have done and published perhaps, and you want to share it with us. It will be nice. May I say, Richard, that they volunteer and then let Rajesh know so that he will keep track and slot them for different months?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Good.
As far as today's program, screenshots and the PPTs have already been shared through mail and through WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I just saw it. Yeah. Ratika wants to say something.
Richard just asked me to see if I could write to Professor Michael Shevlin in Ireland, and maybe he could talk about one of his research projects that he's been doing recently. So I will write to him and then maybe get a date from him and forward it to Rajesh. We could slot him in and then put things around him.
Yes, I think it's a good idea to occasionally have an international presentation. I'm not obviously not too often, but I think that is quite good to broaden people's horizons in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Yeah.
And Richard, do you think we should ask Professor Garner too?
Yes, I think Professor Garner later in the year would be good. Yeah. I think somebody was just asking a question there as well. Did you get that, Rajesh?
Saheli is volunteered, so she can
Excellent.
be.
Oh,
She
is
can
it?
be.
That's nice. So fast.
And I know about Aparna Mukherjee. I think she has just completed her PhD, so she could be another one. Then Dr.
Yeah,
Ratan sir,
ma'am, I'm not ready with it. I'm just asking. I'm not a PhD scholar at all, so
no issue.
Doesn't
As
matter as
and I
long
have
as
not
you've done the
published.
research.
I have not published also, ma'am. So only what I can do, what I have planned. So I want to share with that. Am I going correctly? That's it.
We can
Let
help
us.
such candidates also, isn't it, Richard, who want to know whether they are doing it right, Richard?
Yes, of course. I think
Yeah.
that's a really good idea, Sahali, and let's hear what you've got to say and share any issues you've got, any questions, and that's part of the purpose of this forum. So that's a really good idea.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
So, Saheli Mukherjee, I can slot you by March because 7th of Feb we have Dr. Sulata Ajit presenting. Then maybe we can slot you for March. If mentors agree.
It's okay. It's okay, sir.
Alert
Madam,
from UI server. Low battery. Alert.
Who says low battery?
That was mine. Sorry. I've just turned it off.
Okay.
Ratika needs recharging.
Yeah, it just needs a charging.
So we have Dr. Sulata Madam present in our today's session. Next is
Sulata's there, yeah.
Next is her slot, and she will be talking on the her research which she had done on children with autism spectrum disorder, taking into a sample of mainstream schools in Chennai,
Great.
which she did with differentiated instruction. So I think she is slotted on 7th of Feb 2022. And Saheli Mukherjee, we can slot you on next, that is March 7th, 2022. Is it okay, mentors?
You heard Sumati, you said, no, after that,
Yeah,
Rajesh?
I'm yet to hear from Sumati Madam.
Okay. Okay.
She's currently put herself on hold. She said she'll wait for a couple of months and then
Then it is
research.
fine. Yeah. We'll also ask others, like Richard rightly said, put it on our social media to request people to volunteer so that the chain shouldn't break. It has started so well and going so beautifully.
I also want to say, Jayanti, that any of the participants, if they want help before they present, they can contact me definitely, and I'm sure Pooja will be fine personally on a thing to discuss things if they want to before their presentation, if they have any doubts.
Brilliant.
We are more than open to help out with any of their presentations.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
so
that.
much.
See, Saheli, already you have got help even before you ask.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely, I will first make these things, and then I will talk with Pooja ma'am and Ratika ma'am. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Don't hesitate at all. You've got our numbers on the WhatsApp thing
Yes,
anyway,
yes.
so you've got email addresses. Yeah.
And
Yes,
that
ma'am, I have.
holds good
I
for
have.
all others also. So all of you who are there, please take advantage of this offer that you are getting. That we have our experts to help you with your research and presentation. That is brilliant. That's really the purpose of this forum. So as far as we could reach out, it's really nice. So that's all from my end, Rajesh, and thank you, Pooja, again for the brilliant presentation, and hopefully you will have the second level of your work also getting done. And I thank all of you who are also volunteering for the future presentations.
Yes, thanks to everybody, and thanks for organising this today, Rajesh. We'll be in touch.
Yeah,
Thank
as
you.
usual, Rajesh, good work as usual.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Richard.
Bye.
Thanks to everybody. Okay.
Once again,
Thank
have
you
a
and good
great
night.
year.
Good
Have a
night.
great
Yes.
new year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.